Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 17th chapter, text number 20. Hiranyaksho nujastasya priyah priti krinanvaham gadapanir divam yato Yujutsu Mrigayan Ranam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. His younger brother Hiranyaksha was always ready to satisfy his elder brother by his activities. Hiranyaksha took a club on his shoulder and travelled all over the universe with a fighting spirit just to satisfy Hiranyakashipu. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The demoniac spirit is to train all family members to exploit the resources of this universe for personal sense gratification, whereas the godly spirit is to engage everything in the service of the Lord. Hiranyakashipu was himself very powerful, and he made his younger brother Hiranyaksha powerful to assist him in fighting with everyone and lording it over material nature as long as possible. If possible, he wanted to rule the universe eternally. These are the demonstrations of the spirit of the demoniac living entity. Please repeat the translation. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. So, we are seeing the birth of two demons, Hiranyaksha, the younger brother, and both are brothers, Hiranyaksha, the younger one, and Hiranyakashipu, the elder one. Two powerful demons who have taken birth on this planet Earth by the plan of the Lord. In the previous verse we saw, the verse goes, the elder child Hiranyakashipu was unafraid of death from anyone within the three worlds because he received a benediction from Lord Brahma. He was proud and puffed up due to this benediction and was able to bring all three planetary systems under his control. And in today's verse, it is talking about how Hiranyaksha also joined in this demoniac mentality of his elder brother just to satisfy his brother, Hiranyakashipu. So in today's purport, Prabhupada is talking about the demoniac spirit. What is the demoniac spirit? The demoniac spirit is to train the family members and others to exploit the resources of universe for personal sense gratification. To some extent, every living entity, everyone who is born on this planet, has a small portion of this spirit. How to exploit the resources of this universe for personal sense gratification. And how Hiranyakashipu, now if someone has to have this demoniac spirit, he must have some power. Without power you cannot have this demoniac spirit. Only when power comes in, this demoniac spirit will also come in. So, the descriptions of the demoniac spirit is given here in the purport. Further Prabhupada is writing, Hiranyakashipu was very powerful and he made his younger brother also very powerful. Why? Just so that they could fight with everyone and lord it over the material nature as long as possible. This is another symptom of demoniac spirit. And then another symptom of demoniac spirit mentioned here in the purport, he wanted to rule the entire universe eternally. This shows how powerful the demoniac spirit is. Not just rule a small kingdom, a small planet, rule the entire universe and rule it eternally. So these are the demonstrations of the spirit of demoniac living entity. So how did Hiranyakashipu, how did he get this demoniac spirit? And what helped him? Who helped him to get this demoniac spirit? And why this demoniac spirit is not good? A living entity is supposed to get freed from this demoniac spirit, and he should have, instead of a demoniac spirit, he should have a godly spirit, and it is only the godly spirit which will help us to become freed from this entanglement of this material world and go back to the spiritual world. So this purport is talking about the demoniac spirit. Let's hear from Srimad Bhagavatam how Hiranyakashipu got this demoniac spirit and some other details about his demoniac spirit. So Hiranyakashipu, we are reading chapter number 9, this is chapter 17 that we are reading. In one of the earlier chapters of Bhagavatam, chapter 13, I think, the appearance of Vasudev, there it was briefly mentioned, Maitreya Rishi briefly describes to Vidura about the appearance of Lord Vasudev and how he killed Hiranyaksha, the younger brother of Hiranyakashipu. And because of this killing of Hiranyaksha, later, after a few chapters, we will again see elaborately, Maitreya is asked by Vidura, I would like you to give elaborate descriptions of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in one of the later chapters, more elaborately, Maitreya Muni will describe to Vidura about how Hiranyaksha was killed. But shortly it is mentioned in the previous chapters. So there, Lord Vasudev had killed Hiranyaksha. And this had angered Hiranyakashipu a lot. And Hiranyakashipu wanted to take revenge for his brother's death. He wanted to take revenge on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. This is one demoniac spirit, taking revenge on the Supreme Lord. You can imagine the amount of enviousness, the amount of enmity a jiva has developed towards the Supreme Lord. That is why he is here. And the enmity is so much, I don't want to be the Lord, I want to replace you. So this was the amount of demoniac tendency, demoniac spirit that Hiranyakashipu had. He wanted to take revenge. And he had other desires as well. What were the other desires that Hiranyakashipu had? He wanted to be deathless. No one is deathless in this material world. No one is immortal, man is mortal. So he wanted to be deathless, another exhibition of demoniac spirit. And he wanted to rule the entire universe. He wanted to be free from old age diseases. These were the desires that Hiranyakashipu had, the demoniac spirit that he cultivated. So now to get all this, is not so easy to be free from old age disease, to rule the entire universe eternally, to be the sole leader, and to replace, to kill the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. These were all the tendencies he had. So what he did, he started performing austerities. Because it's a well-known fact, if we perform austerities, we get certain powers, right? We have seen many yogis perform some austerities and they are bestowed with some powers, yogic powers. So he started performing austerities. And not ordinary austerities, very severe type of austerities he took to. So what he did, he went to Mandara Hill. Generally when you perform austerities, people go to those mountains, especially this past time and the previous ages, that's how it was. So to perform austerities, he went to Mandara Hill, forest, Mandara Hill, and there he stood on his toes, standing on the toes. You can imagine how it is, standing on the toes like this. And then he stretched his arm upwards, and he started looking at the sky like this. You can't look at the sky for long, the sun is so powerful. But he did that. That was the kind of austerity he performed. And he performed this for many, many years. And as a result of these austerities that Hiranyakashipu performed for many, many years, he acquired certain kind of power, and a strong effulgent light started emanating from his head. And it is mentioned in the Bhagavatam that the power of the light was so strong, it was as if a sun had arisen on the planet Earth. It was as strong as a sun, and it was giving so much of heat and light, so much of heat and light was emanating from Hiranyakashipu's head that it started disturbing everyone. And the disturbance is again described in the Bhagavatam. What was the kind of disturbance that was caused to everyone by this penance, austerity of Hiranyakashipu? The rivers and the ocean became agitated. Have you seen an ocean getting agitated? And if an ocean gets agitated, how fearful it is, right? So the rivers and the ocean became agitated. The land and the mountains started trembling. The stars and the planets started falling. And all directions were set ablaze. So everybody became very scared. What is happening? And what is the cause of all these things? We heard a similar descriptions in some of in the previous chapters, how when Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu was born, there was darkness all over, right? And all the devatas didn't know what to do, and they went. So again, all because of this demoniac spirit. So this is what happened. And none of the devatas could stay in their planets, because they were so disturbed because of the heat and because of the disturbance that was caused due to the tapasya of Hiranyakashipu. So they all went and approached Lord Brahma for help, because Brahma is their father, the head of all the demigods. So they went and approached Lord Brahma, and Brahma understood the situation, and with his Divya Gyan he understood what is the cause of all these things. Even the demigods know. They went and told him that this is all due to Hiranyakashipu's austerity. So please help us, please do something. We cannot stay like this for long. We seek your help. So Brahma immediately, along with some few other sages like Bhrigu Muni, he descended on this planet Earth in his swan airplane, and he started looking for Hiranyakashipu. Initially they could not find Hiranyakashipu, because Hiranyakashipu, because of his deep austerities for many hundreds of years, what had happened, his entire body had gotten covered with an anthill. So the austerities that he was performing was under the ants had created a hill over it, and there was no flesh, no blood in Hiranyakashipu's body remaining. Imagine, no flesh, no blood in his body remaining, but Hiranyakashipu is perfectly alive. This is a proof that we are spirit soul. We are not the body. It is the soul that keeps us alive, the living spirit spark within us that keeps us alive, and not anything else. So Hiranyakashipu was doing tapasya, doing meditation. He was deeply absorbed in that meditation, and he was living. And on top of his body, this anthill had grown, and on top of that, some creepers and something. So, in other words, you couldn't see Hiranyakashipu anywhere in the forest. And then Brahma understood, and then with his Divya Gyan, he could see where Hiranyakashipu was inside the anthill. And he went there and he called out to Hiranyakashipu, "My dear son," he said, "please." Now, another point to be noted. Now, Hiranyakashipu, we are talking in this purport how demoniac he was, what kind of a demoniac spirit he had. Now, if Hiranyakashipu could perform so much of tapasya, not so easy for anybody to perform so much of tapasya, right? Very difficult to perform. Tapasyas are performed by great tapasvis who are very, self-controlled, and by great devotees, yogis. So if Hiranyakashipu could perform so much of tapasya that the result was like this, he started disturbing everyone and everybody became so afraid. Why is Hiranyakashipu called demoniac in spite of doing so much tapasya? If somebody is doing so much of tapasya, he should not be called demoniac. He should be called at least saintly, if not godly, right? So why is it like this? Why is he called? Why Hiranyakashipu is demoniac in spite of performing so much tapasya? Because his tapasya was not aimed at satisfying the Supreme Lord Vishnu, it was aimed at satisfying himself. It was for his own sense gratification. And that is why, and it was not just for his own sense gratification, it was for harming everybody, it was against Vishnu. And that is why, in spite of Hiranyakashipu performing so much of tapasya, he was called demoniac. There was no meaning, no use of this tapasya. Because ultimately we will see how all this tapasya will prove to be a failure and he will perish. Aradhito yadi haris tapasa tata kim. Naradhito yadi haris tapasa tata kim. Aradhito, if you are actually worshipping Krishna, if your interest is in the Supreme Lord Vishnu, then there is no need of any tapasya. Tapasa tata kim. Aradhito yadi haris. If you are worshipping Hari. And naradhito yadi hari, if you are not worshipping Vishnu, if your interest is not in line with the interest of Vishnu, then tapasah tatakim, then what is the use of all this tapasya? So that is why Hiranyakashipu, in spite of performing all these tapasyas, he was called demoniac. His spirit of tapasya was demoniac. It was not godly. So Brahma saw Hiranyakashipu and told Hiranyakashipu, please come out. You have performed enough tapasya. Now the devatas are like this. You satisfy the devatas will get satisfied and will grant you some boons. Now it is up to us how to utilize these boons. The freedom is with us. That's why we are called, we all have free will. We all have free will. So he called Hiranyakashipu out of his anthill, and when he came out, he saw Hiranyakashipu had practically no body, because there was no blood, there was no muscle, nothing. So first what Lord Brahma did, now in the purport we are reading today, how Hiranyakashipu had demoniac tendency and he had lot of power, lot of strength. So how did he get his strength and power? It is here. So when he came out, he had practically no body. So now Brahma, because he had satisfied Brahma, he had performed all this tapasya and Brahma was satisfied with his tapasya, Brahma took some water from his kamandalu and he sprinkled it on Hiranyakashipu. And what happened? The moment Brahma sprinkled some water on Hiranyakashipu's body, immediately Hiranyakashipu got a renewed body with immense physical strength. His body became so strong that Bhagavatam mentions that even if a thunderbolt would strike Hiranyakashipu's body, his body would not be affected. There is nothing in this planet that can withstand the striking of a thunderbolt. One of the most powerful thing that you can think of in this material world is are the mountains, right? And it is said the only way to destroy a mountain is when it is struck by a thunderbolt. And here we see Hiranyakashipu, he got a body that even a thunderbolt couldn't destroy. So this was the power that Hiranyakashipu got, and his whole body became very young, very energetic, and he had a luster like that of gold. This is what Hiranyakashipu desired. Of course, many more. This was a very small desire. So Hiranyakashipu came out and he saw Brahma standing there and immediately fell flat and offered obeisances to Lord Brahma. Another very interesting point, Hiranyakashipu is offering his obeisances to Lord Brahma, but he is inimical to Lord Vishnu. He wants to kill Lord Vishnu, he wants to take revenge from Lord Vishnu. And here he is saying, Brahma he is offering obeisances. So demons, this is another tendency that they have. They do not, the meaning of demoniac means against godly spirit, demoniac spirit. And godly when we talk of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So they see, the demons see devatas as independent of Lord Vishnu. They do not realize that the power that the devatas have received, have gotten, is actually bestowed to them by the mercy of Vishnu, Krishna. They think that the powers that they are getting is all by the devatas. Kamayastasta hritagyanah prapadyante anya devataha. This was the position of Hiranyakashipu. Being impelled by strong desire to enjoy the senses and to gratify himself to his maximum capacity, kamasthatha hritagyana. His intelligence was stolen. Hiranyakashipu's intelligence was stolen. And so what he did? Prapadyante anya devata. He surrendered to Brahma. Only those who are intelligent surrender to Vishnu. Prapadya. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate. So the jnanavans mam prapadyate. Krishna is telling Arjuna. The intelligent mam prapadyate, they worship, they surrender to Krishna, just like Prahlad Maharaj. But kamayasthat hritagyana prapadyante anna devata. So unfortunately, this was the position of Hiranyakashipu. He surrendered. So he offered all his prayers, he surrendered to him, and then Hiranyakashipu started asking his boons. Brahma said, okay, you have worshipped me, you have satisfied me, now please ask me, what do you want? Initially Hiranyakashipu asked, I want to be deathless. Because that was his desire. He wanted to be deathless, he wanted to rule over the entire universe eternally. You can rule over the entire universe eternally only if you are deathless. So Brahma said, my dear son, I am very happy with your austerities and penances, but even I can't grant you this boon because even I am not deathless. So then, what did Hiranyakashipu do? So he tried to, instead of asking this one boon of deathlessness, he thought he will become deathless in a roundabout manner. This is a demoniac mentality. If you can't get something, try to get that something in a roundabout manner. But get it. Another demoniac spirit. So, what boons did he ask? The first boon that he asked was that, my dear Lord Brahma, I should not be killed by any devata or any daitya, any demigod or any demon. No demon, no demigod should kill me. Brahma said, Tathastu. Fine, granted. Then he said, the second boon, I should not be killed also by any human being or any animal, any living entity. So right from Devata to Daitya to human beings to animals, any living and no living entity should kill him. So Brahma again said, granted. And then the third boon that he asked was, I should not be killed inside the house or outside the house. He's trying to place many conditions so that he can be deathless. That is what he desired. He said, okay, granted. Then he said, I should not be killed during the day or during the night. He said, granted. I should not be killed either in the ocean or on the land or on the sky. He said, granted. And then he was thinking what else to ask, because almost he had covered up everything. Then he remembered the Sudarshan Chakra of Vishnu. He said, Sudarshan Chakra is a weapon. So then he again desired a boon. I should not be killed by any weapon whatsoever. And then he said, and Brahma granted that also. And then he went on asking a whole list of other boons and desires, and Brahma went on granting everything because he had really performed immense tapasya and he was qualified to receive all of them. So Brahma, one after the other, granted all these things to Hiranyakashipu. Now Brahma, after he granted, Brahma is a devotee. He knows what Hiranyakashipu is asking is actually not good for him. So Brahma actually, after granting Hiranyakashipu all these boons, he warned Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu, you have taken all these boons from me, but let me tell you, it will be very difficult for you to live with these boons, to maintain these boons. Just like you see, if you acquire lot of wealth, lot of power, lot of comforts, lot of opulences, it requires some endeavor, right, to acquire all these things. In the same way, just like we have to endeavor to acquire all these material opulences, it also takes a lot of endeavor to maintain them. So Brahma told him that you will not be happy, you will not be satisfied with all these boons, because you will always be in great anxiety to maintain them. But Hiranyakashipu, this was his desire and nothing could budge him, and he apparently thought he is very happy. And so after all these boons were given, Brahma went and Hiranyakashipu became very, very powerful. And after this, he started demonstrating his power. What did he do? He straight went and conquered, again the demoniac spirit will come up. He went and conquered all the 14 planetary systems, upper, middle and lower. He defeated all the devatas, demoniac spirit. He conquered all the planets, defeated all the devatas. He seized power from them and he made all the devatas their slaves, his slaves, sorry. And it is said, he became so furious and he so severely chastised the devatas for no fault of the devatas. What spirit is this? Again a demoniac spirit. And that to the devatas, for no fault, he is chastising them and he was giving them a lot of trouble. And he was enjoying himself, apparently. Not actually enjoying, he had a lot of anxiety also. And he occupied the post of Indra, he sat in his palace and everybody became his servants. He made everybody became his slaves. So now all these things, the Bhagavatam also mentioned very nicely how because of the fear, the demonic spirit that Hiranyakashipu had and the amount of fear he instilled in all the living entities, how the living entities started reacting to Hiranyakashipu. It is said that Hiranyakashipu's fear made everyone pay obeisances to him always. All of them became surrendered to Hiranyakashipu, including the devatas. It is said that the earth, Mother Earth, she is also a personality. She became so afraid of Hiranyakashipu's demoniac spirit that she automatically started giving grains even without being plowed. This much fear Mother Earth got into. The cow started giving milk profusely. The tree started bearing fruits and flowers, all because of the fear of Hiranyakashipu. And like this, all living entities, out of fear of Hiranyakashipu, started working and started worshipping Hiranyakashipu. When Hiranyakashipu would just raise his eyebrows, everybody would become very afraid. This was the amount of fear that Hiranyakashipu instilled in others. Now, if you have got so much of power, everybody becomes your servant and you are occupying the post of Indra, you are ruling, you have all the comforts, you have everything that you want, there is no shortage with you. Generally a person will be very happy. But the Bhagavata mentions what was the state of mental condition of Hiranyakashipu. It is said that Hiranyakashipu, because of the demoniac spirit, because him wanting to defeat Lord Vishnu, although he acquired so much of power, so much of wealth, so much of comfort, everyone his servant, in spite of acquiring all these things, Hiranyakashipu remained dissatisfied. And why was that? Why he remained dissatisfied? Because instead of serving the Supreme Lord, instead of serving Vishnu, he was serving his senses. He became a servant of his senses. He had no control over himself. He had no control over his mind. Bandhuratma atmanastasya. His mind, he thought Vishnu is his enemy, but actually he failed to realize the biggest enemy was his own self, his own mind. He had no control over his senses, and that's why he remained dissatisfied. So we can see here the kind of demoniac tendency that Hiranyakashipu had developed. He was somehow blessed by Brahma because of his austerities, and this is not the kind of tendencies that live. So all the living entities, to some, in small degrees, we all have these kinds of these kind of tendencies. We want to enjoy ourselves, we want to rule over, we want to control. In Hiranyakashipu it was magnified to many millions of times. Contrary to this, what kind of tendencies we should develop? We should develop godly tendencies, godly spirit. Here in the Bhagavatam, in today's verse, Prabhupada is writing, the demoniac spirit is to train all family members to exploit the resources for this universe, for personal sense gratification, whereas godly spirit is to engage everything in the service of the Lord. And the best example of godly spirit was Hiranyakashipu's own son, Prahlad Maharaj. And what were the godly spirits of Prahlad Maharaj? Is written in the Bhagavatam. The transcendental qualities of Prahlad Maharaj were, he was completely cultured and a very qualified Brahmana. Very cultured and a qualified Brahmana. This is the spirit that we must develop. He had full control over his mind and senses. Hiranyakashipu had no control over his mind and senses. Prahlad was very kind to all living entities, a godly spirit. The demoniac spirit Hiranyakashipu, he subjugated them, he chastised them, very unkind to all the living entities. Prahlad, another godly spirit, was the best friend of everyone. And he was free from pride. So these were the kind of godly spirit that Prahlad had. And some other nice godly spirit that he had was, he was never envious of Vaishnavas. Hiranyakashipu was very envious of Vishnu. He was not agitated when put into danger. Why was he not agitated when put to danger? Because he knows that Krishna will protect. Avashya Rakshibe Krishna. And if we don't have this realization that Krishna is always there to protect me, we will always be agitated when we are in danger. He was never interested in the fruitive activities described in the Vedas, another godly spirit. He considered everything material to be useless, the godly spirit that Prahlad had. And he was completely devoid of all material desires, the godly spirit of Prahlad. On the other hand, Hiranyakashipu, we see how he had desire to rule over the entire universe eternally. Prahlad was also uninterested in material affairs, uninterested in sense gratification, and he was always thinking of Krishna, and his mind was absorbed in Krishna. So this is the kind of spirit, the godly spirit that Prahlad had, and this is the kind of spirit that we must develop. And if we develop these godly spirit, very easily the demoniac spirit, to whatever extent we have in us, will all get cleansed by the grace of the Supreme Lord. We'll end here. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.